Ever had your day start with someone threatening you before you've even had your morning coffee? Because that's exactly how my morning went. A woman in designer heels, wielding a megaphone like she was some sort of sheriff, judge, and jury, all rolled into one. She gave me 5 minutes to hand over my 12-year-old daughter, or she'd have the police at my door. The worst part? She didn't even know who she was messing with. The sun had barely crested the horizon. I stood on my front porch, boots still dusty from yesterday, as a crowd gathered at the edge of my ranch. Phones were out, live streams were rolling, and leading the spectacle was none other than HOA President Karen Prescott. Her heels sank into the soft dirt as she pointed dramatically, orchestrating her personal little riot while the neighborhood eagerly watched. Sophia, my daughter, stood next to me, pale, trembling, far too grown up for her years after everything life had already thrown at her. Karen's voice crackled through the megaphone. "Lucas Harper, I know you're inside. Your daughter released the horses last night and damaged community property. Hand her over now, or I'm contacting law enforcement." I glanced down at Sophia's small, shaking hands. There wasn't a chance in hell she had done this. That morning, we'd found the fence deliberately cut, a clean slice that no accident could have made. This was no coincidence. Someone was setting her up, and now Karen was ready to put my child on public trial in front of the whole internet. I stepped toward the gate, keeping my voice calm, though my blood was boiling. Karen stood there, dramatically waving an HOA violation notice as if it were a warrant, feeding the mob that hung on her every word. "You have 5 minutes, Harper," she shrieked, "or I escalate this to the state police. Clearly, you can't handle your own child." From the corner of my eye, I spotted Tom Reynolds, one of my neighbors, standing in the back of the crowd, uncomfortable but silent. No one dared oppose Karen. She had already driven several families to sell their homes through lawsuits and intimidation, growing bolder each time she won. I opened the gate just wide enough for everyone to see the brass badge pinned to my chest. Sheriff Lucas Harper. The air went still. Karen's face turned a shade of red that words can't describe. "If you want to call the police, you're looking at him," I said firmly, "and my daughter isn't guilty of anything. Someone sabotaged our fence, and whoever did will face charges for trespassing and property damage." For a brief moment, Karen wavered, but then she snapped back, screaming about conflict of interest and corruption. She wasn't giving up. She pulled out her phone, set a 5-minute timer, and the countdown echoed over my land as people filmed, whispered, and waited for the drama to unfold. I didn't budge. Instead, I walked back to Sophia and wrapped my arm around her. She whispered through tears, "Dad, I didn't do anything. I locked the horses up last night." And I believe her with every fiber of my being. I had made a promise to her mother before she passed, that no one would ever harm our daughter. And Karen Prescott wasn't going to be the one to break that promise. The timer hit 0. Triumph flashed in Karen's eyes as she dialed the state police. But later that day, reviewing my security footage at the station, I froze. The video clearly showed a shadowy figure sneaking along the property line, tool in hand, cutting the fence. And that silhouette? It was disturbingly familiar. The next day, things got uglier. I left early to review evidence while Sophia stayed home, doing her homework, or so I thought. Midway through the morning, my phone buzzed with a text that made my stomach drop. "Dad, Mrs. Prescott is here again. She's saying weird things about my future. I'm scared." I broke every speed limit racing back. When I arrived, Karen stood there alone, holding a thick folder, putting on a concerned act. "Sheriff Harper," she said sweetly, "I was simply talking to Sophia about her options. It would be such a shame if certain behavioral concerns ended up on her permanent record, don't you think?" She held up official-looking documents from the school board, a veiled threat against my daughter's education. My patience snapped. I stepped between them, voice low and sharp. "Get off my property. Now." But she wasn't finished. "Such a big ranch for just the two of you, Sheriff," she murmured. Perhaps other families could provide Sophia with a more stable environment. Her message was crystal clear. She was threatening to come after my custody rights. Karen retreated to her car, tossing one final warning out the window. "People talk, Sheriff. They worry. Then she drove off, leaving Sophia sobbing on the porch, asking me if she was ruining my life. That hurt more than anything Karen had said. That night, I called in a favor. My closest friend and deputy, Ryan Caldwell, started digging into Karen's past. I want to know who she's working with and what skeletons she's hiding. Meanwhile, Sophia sat me down and quietly confessed. There was more to this. She'd overheard Karen talking to a man one evening when she was out riding. The conversation was about buying up ranch properties around here for cheap and flipping them for a massive development deal. Ryan's digging paid off fast. Turns out Karen wasn't just a power-hungry HOA president. She was working hand-in-hand with a real estate firm that had their sights set on our whole valley. They'd already driven out multiple families by targeting them with violations, fines, and legal threats, then scooping up the properties for a fraction of their value. And now, we were the final piece of their puzzle. But if Karen thought she had me cornered, she underestimated just how far I'd go for my daughter. I called a few people I trusted, families Karen had bullied out of their homes. I bought their properties back quietly, piece by piece, using my savings and a little help from the community bank. One by one, the land came under my name. By the time Karen realized what was happening, it was too late. At the next HOA meeting, where she expected to announce a vote on my removal, I walked in with a briefcase full of property deeds. As of this week, I announced calmly, I own over 60% of the land within this HOA jurisdiction, including the main road, the park, and the community center itself. The room went dead silent. Karen turned ghostly pale. She tried to argue, called her lawyer, but everything was legal and properly recorded. Ryan stood beside me, confirming every detail for the HOA board. I laid out the new terms. The corrupt HOA was dissolved effective immediately. Fees were cut dramatically. Rules were slashed down to a few basic safety guidelines. Every major decision will be made through a community vote, not by Karen's iron fist. And as for her, she had 30 days to either sign a new lease with fair terms or leave. The turnaround was almost immediate. We replaced the old HOA sign with one car from oak that read, Harper Valley, built on trust. Neighbors who once avoided each other started gathering again, sharing coffee and laughter. Kids ran freely without fear of citations. And Karen? She went through every stage, rage, denial, bargaining. But eventually, she changed. To my surprise, she started showing up at events, helping out, even apologizing. She managed complaints respectfully and handled the resort operations professionally. One evening, I saw her helping an elderly couple unload groceries, chatting about local hiking trails like a real neighbor. The resort thrived. Word spread fast. Soon, we were fully booked months in advance. Local businesses flourished, and even the newspapers called our valley the hidden gem of Colorado. Eventually, I offered Karen a full-time position managing the resort, under one condition. She'd treat every person here with fairness and respect. 8 months after that chaotic morning, I sat on my porch, sipping coffee as lanterns lit up across the cabins. Families laughed around the fire pits, and children's voices echoed in the cool night air. Karen sat beside me and quietly said, I gave you 5 minutes to surrender. You gave me a second chance at life. Funny how that worked out. And just as the stars blanketed the sky, Sophia curled up beside me and whispered, Daddy, can we live here forever? I smiled and whispered back, maybe someday, sweetheart, maybe someday. Sophia, smart as a whip, had the presence of mind to record Karen at the gate. I couldn't have been prouder of her. But a few nights later, I got a text from an unknown number that made my blood run cold. You can't protect her forever. Then, just a few days after that, everything exploded. I came home to find a full-on circus at the end of my driveway. Karen had escalated, called in news vans, made a spectacle of everything. The whole town was there. Half of them were buying into her lies, and the other half just wanted to see a good show. Karen stood at the center of it all, delivering her usual speech about community standards and how my daughter was a threat to everything they held dear. But Officer Janet Mills, one of the responding officers, stepped in to check on Sophia. She came back after a few minutes and said, The child is fine, well cared for. She's doing advanced math homework. Sophia, without missing a beat, stepped forward and said, "Mrs. Prescott keeps coming to our house, saying I should live somewhere else. I don't want to leave." That's when you could feel the shift in the crowd. Some of the people who'd been nodding, along with Karen, started to look uncomfortable. A few even began to question her motives. Then, out of nowhere, Tom Reynolds, yes, that Tom Reynolds, spoke up. "Karen, maybe we should take this up at the next HOA meeting." But Karen was already too deep in her own performance to back down. She started waving around a folder full of bogus violations, ranting about corruption and illegal activity. Just then, Dorothy Bennett, one of the oldest and most respected residents of the neighborhood, stood up and said, "That's enough, Karen. Let's hear the whole story." And just like that, out came a recording. Karen's own voice caught on tape, discussing how she had driven other families out of town for a developer's kickbacks. Emails, documents, everything. Dorothy had it all. Then, in the most unexpected move, Sophia played her own recording. It was Karen threatening her, saying, "This town belongs to me. In 5 minutes, your entire life is going to change." The crowd went dead silent. The truth was right there, crystal clear. Officer Mills didn't hesitate. She stepped forward and slapped the cuffs on Karen for harassment and threats. The once untouchable HOA president was now reduced to a mess of tears and screams as she was dragged away. Her mascara ran down her face. Her skirt was torn. The entire scene was captured live and spread across the internet within minutes. The next morning, my phone was blowing up with messages, support from people I didn't even know. People from all over the town, offering apologies and backing. Even Mayor Daniels called to personally apologize, lifted my suspension, and said the city council wanted me back at work. And Tom Reynolds, the same guy who had kept quiet for so long, started pushing for reforms within the HOA. But the biggest change was what happened to the HOA itself. Dorothy, who had always kept to herself, became the new president. Her first order of business? Paint your fences any color you want. No more rules, no more petty control. As for Sophia, she became a hero. She inspired other kids to stand up for themselves, showing them they didn't have to hide or be afraid of the bullies in their lives. It was a proud moment, but the story didn't end there. Karen, in true form, didn't give up. From jail, she posted videos claiming she had been set up. She screamed about her innocence, but it didn't matter. The evidence piled up. In court, her schemes were laid bare. Extortion, racketeering, harassment. No bail. Straight to federal prison. The entire town started to heal in small ways. People began to trust one another again. And as for Sophia and me, we decided to do something positive with the mess we'd been through. We started a writing camp for local kids, Freedom Ranch. It became a place for kids to find their voice, learn to speak up, and stand strong against bullies, whether in school, at home, or in the neighborhood. 6 months after Karen's arrest, our ranch was alive with laughter and joy. Kids rode horses, shared stories, and played together like they'd never had the chance before. I watched Sophia teaching a shy kid how to ride. Her patience and kindness, something I couldn't help but admire. And that's when I realized it wasn't just about reclaiming our home. It was about building something beautiful out of the chaos. Karen's shadow still hung over us, sure, but the light that had come through was brighter than ever. So, have you ever dealt with a suburban tyrant? Stood up to a bully and seen the whole town wake up to the truth? Drop your story in the comments below. Let's remind everyone, justice isn't just about one person. It's about the whole community rising together.